You're listening to Edging the Truth.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode 24 of Edging the Truth, the conspiracy theory podcast, where we take you to the edge of the truth, but no further. With me, as always, are my core hosts. We got Andy Big Fudge below me. We got Mikey One Lungs over there. And we got Dave Red Rasmus over there, just looking normal. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Nobody notices nothing. We're fine. We're fine. Yeah. Are we all fine? I'm good. How are you?
Everything's fine here.
Okay, everything's fine here. Okay. And this is episode 24. We are talking about wrestling conspiracy theories. Not bank robbing conspiracy theories. I know the masks look very similar, but it is definitely wrestling conspiracy theories. And I'm going to venture to say that this is going to be the first in a 3-part series.
Whoa!
Wrestling conspiracies. That's how deep I think we can delve into this, but sure as hell not today. It'll be for a future time, TBD. But this is the first of a 3-part series on wrestling conspiracies. And today, we are going to discuss 2 wrestling conspiracies that one, I feel is very much did happen conspiracy-wise, and the other one I feel like we were going to have to throw this out to all of us to have a discussion on. So the 2 conspiracy theories we're going to discuss today are: the first one is the Brody is the Bruiser Brody conspiracy theory where he was murdered in Puerto Rico, that they said was part of the show, and many people think was covered up and just was a whole thing. And the other one we were going to talk about is the conspiracy theory, one of the oldest wrestling conspiracy theories, I might add, almost as old as wrestling itself, is the rumor that Macho Man Randy Savage hooked up with, as they say, a young Stephanie McMahon and underage Stephanie McMahon. Yes, so we will. These are the 2 things we're going to discuss today. There's a lot of stuff here, but at first I just kind of want to throw it around to my guys here, and let's talk wrestling. We're all big wrestling heads here. If not all of us, at one time or another in our lives, we're bigger into wrestling than we are now, and we come and we go in it. But I think I felt a resurgence in wrestling with all of us. Our good friend Ron Funches has his podcast One Fall every Sunday. And we've all we're all in a wrestling league pretty much with him, so it's like we are all kind of living that wrestling life these last couple of years. So what do you guys think about what's your wrestling story, why you like wrestling, and what do you think? What's your take on just wrestling conspiracy theories in general? Andy, I'll throw it to you first.
I'm definitely. I think I'm not the biggest wrestling guy. I say I'm the least into it out of this group. I do appreciate more things about it than I have in the past. I would say that for sure. Not the most hip on everything, as the kids would say. But as far as these conspiracy theories go, I don't know. Are these conspiracy theories, or are we just like about to try to solve a murder and then just figure out if this guy fucked a chick?
We're looking at murder and statutory.
That is exactly what we're looking at. And who better to lead us through this? Trying to figure out if this guy banged somebody than you, Brian. But so I'll start with the Bruiser Brody thing, because I watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode today, which was actually like it's a pretty good show from somebody like I just said that's not like super into wrestling. I feel like they did a really good job.
It's entertaining
of painting that story. But anyway, Bruiser Brody, this big wrestling personality back in the 80s, was going down to Puerto Rico. He had developed quite a reputation for himself. He was undefeated. He was this big guy, and he was just said to, just beat the shit out of his opponents in the ring. A lot of blood during his matches, and especially if he didn't like you. He really had no mercy. So apparently, he was going down to Puerto Rico for a wrestling match, and I guess they had owed him about $25,000, and he was about to buy into this wrestling company in Puerto Rico, and kind of was going to buy in and kind of take over and try to change a lot of things down there. So Puerto Rico at that time, the wrestling community was was pretty big around there. It was pretty rough. The fans, you know, let you have it. I know there were certain wrestlers that said, you know, they got like piss thrown on them, they got rocks thrown at them. The crowd most of the time, you know, thought it was real. They thought wrestling was real. They weren't really in on that it was fake. So I believe it was the guy down there that was the booker and kind of deciding the outcomes, running the show. So Luis Gonzalez, I believe that was his name. Him and Bruiser Brody were not really good buddies. They didn't really like each other. Luis kind of saw the writing on the wall that he was going to be kind of axed from this promotion when this Bruiser Brody thing came true. So the story goes that you know, Brody's walking in to the locker room before the show starts, and the three guys that were kind of, you know, really in charge of the promotion were all sitting there. There was a lot of tension felt in the room, and Luis Gonzalez, according to what was it, Teddy Atlas? Is that was his name? Yeah. Stabbed Bruiser Brody multiple times, multiple lacerations that were, I think, 8 inches or more deep. He's screaming, shouting. Bruiser Brody gets taken to the hospital. In Puerto Rico, I guess they didn't treat stabbings.
Well, it took it because the stadium was so crowded. It took him over an hour to get to the ambulance. I think that was where it went wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right,
is because it was a packed wrestling event in Puerto Rico. Not the first worldest of countries, especially in the 80s, you know, even a part of America, but not of islands. Let's say that first world of islands at that time, and a little bit Wild Westy out there. And he wasn't. They don't have good ambulances. It was in the. You've tried to get it out of a stadium. You know how bad it can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue, Fudge.
Absolutely. So that definitely plays a factor. But I'm talking more so like even when he got to the hospital. This is according to Teddy Atlas that he just wasn't really getting any attention from the doctors or anything, and Atlas had to beg these medical professionals, the doctors, the nurses, to like, come on, get in here. Like his feet are blue, like he's been stabbed multiple times. And according to his story, he said the doctor said they treat stabbings like a common cold in the U.S. Like it's not a big deal. So he's told, okay, he's going to be fine. He's going to pull through. He's stable. Couple hours later, he does eventually pass away. Some of the other wrestlers on the card, you know, they do the show, is feeling, you know, some type of way about it. They don't feel really good, so they basically try to bolt, you know, try to get out of Puerto Rico, right? And you know, they fly Bruiser Brody's wife and his kid down there, and she doesn't find out that her husband's dead until she's off the plane. And she runs into like his arch nemesis, Abdullah, who's about to leave the country. Be like, who has to awkwardly be like, yeah, you don't know your husband's dead. Nobody told you. Anyway, so it's reported that, you know, this Luis guy stabbed him. He's the murderer. They kind of perpetrated a story that it was a fan like that stabbed him outside the locker room and he walked in and he was bleeding. It's kind of like a he said, she said story. Teddy Atlas kind of reports his story to the Puerto Rican police and they tell him, oh, well, your story is different from every other one we've heard. So we're definitely going to contact you. We're going to hear from you again. They never contact him. And Luis Gonzalez, you know, walks free.
Never charged.
They say it's self-defense. So I don't know. It feels like a he said, she said story, but you know, I don't know why a guy like Teddy Atlas would make this up. You know what I mean? Yep,
for sure. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of it's like I said, it's a lot of stuff that we just didn't know. It was an island production. You know, people take care of their own, especially out of stuff like that. Yeah. Also, I would like the record to reflect that I asked Fudge what was his favorite wrestling moment and what does he think of wrestling conspiracies. Then he just went deep. And I was like, all right, cool. You just saved me like 5 minutes of talking.
Bro.
That's how we roll on this podcast. We just get ahead of ourselves.
What about you? What do you think? What do you like wrestling, and what is your take on wrestling conspiracies?
Well, I'm gonna follow the rules. I like wrestling. I grew up watching wrestling, going over to my friend's house early in the mornings before the bus. We'd watch, Raw on Tuesday mornings right before we went and caught the bus because, it was on late at night, so we weren't allowed to stay up and watch the second hour of Raw. So we'd always get up and do that every week, and just really fell in love with wrestling. Probably followed it all the way through high school, maybe first part of college, and kind of fell away from it until a few years back and started hanging out with the Funch Bunch again. And Ron, ignited my love of wrestling again, and went to a couple of GCW shows with him, which for me, like I had always only really watched just like the major productions, WCW, WWE, WWF. And so then seeing GCW and seeing the independent wrestlers and watching them, scrap to get to the next level and then watching them get to that next level. Like it really was fascinating, not just to watch the wrestling, but also to watch the story and their careers evolve. So it's been fun. Got to meet a ton of great people. My favorite memory, of course, and I think Brian, you'll probably agree with me, is watching our boy Ron live his dream and actually wrestle in a match. So that was really cool because, it's just really cool to see somebody that loves something so much and to cross over into that world and on that stage and on that level and do such a great job. So definitely fun. But yeah, I love wrestling.
And we sold merch at that match.
We did.
Sold that merch. I was hustling. I was helping Ron get that robe back in the bag because that was probably the most expensive piece of the clothing in the building.
Probably, yeah. It was a great time. And then we've been to wrestling events ever since, and got to go to do SmackDown. Been to several GCW events now, and Red and I went to Prestige Wrestling here in Portland, and we're gonna go again actually in October coming up, and then we just got our tickets for AEW, which is making its first trip to the West Coast. So, I am all back in on wrestling.
Well, and lastly, we got to throw it to, I guess, El Sabre de Jazz, which means the Jazz Saber. And that's our man Dave over there. Dave, do you like wrestling, Dave?
Yeah, I don't think you. Yeah, no, not really. No, no. My story is a lot like Lung's. I'm a little older than you guys, so I grew up in the days when there was a wrestling cartoon that featured, Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and the Iron Sheik, and that was
cars.
Yeah, it was like part of your Saturday morning watching experience, and so by extension, you got into wrestling. And then again, much like Lung, I kind of fell out of it probably in high school, and have recently come back to it. I've had the pleasure, much like your stories, of meeting some wrestlers and going to some small events. The first ever wrestling event I went to, there couldn't have been more than 75 people there, but that also made it really nice and accessible, and worked my way up to some bigger events. And I think Lung and another friend of ours who's been on the podcast, Ganja John, and I went to an event that was for all three of us, one of our first big COVID events. There were 1,000 people slammed in this ballroom, and but we got to, at the same time we got to see Danhausen and we got to see Effie and Allie, and it was a great event, and also for me really reignited kind of a love of the story. I love the drama and the story and the pantomime and the kind of old world Greek tragedy style stories of all this stuff. I think it's fun. It's fun that isn't really hard to invest in either. You just got to watch a couple episodes in a row, and you're gonna
oh, I know what's going on.
You're like, oh, those are the people from last week who got in a fight with those people, and it's very easy to follow. Brian and I are scoring this fantasy wrestling league that we're all a part of, and that's been the best for me because I'm watching the same brand show every week in and week out, sometimes 2 or 3 episodes in a row. So I feel connected to what's going on, even if I'm not getting to see these people in person. So the conspiracy part of the show today, I think, is interesting too, because so much of what we see is fake. It's fiction. It's a designed fiction for the sake of entertainment. And so,
kayfabe.
yeah, that fabulous word. And so when we're talking about crime, wasn't there just a giant crazy Ric Flair documentary about what a scumbag he was? I mean, there's many notable scumbags in the world of wrestling, and they don't tell everybody how much of a scumbag those people are, right? I'm always fascinated when we're watching some wrestling, and one of the fellow viewers will go, "Oh yeah, he's a racist." Really? Oh, I didn't know that. I'm glad I'm not a fan. Things like that. So does it surprise me that there's conspiracies that true crime things that were covered up for the sake of entertainment, to suspend disbelief for the audience and all that? Yeah, I have no doubt.
Is anybody else only focusing on Red's nose and mouth?
I know there's like this silly mask has like a mesh here, like a Spider-Man mesh.
Just nose and teeth. That's all.
It's like it's real rough, man. This is not. It's not even like this is like a cheap Halloween store mask,
Well, I appreciate the commitment there.
Don't say I don't go all in.
Goes all in for the bit.
So it brings us full circle to what Fudge has already laid out for us. Frankly, better than I was going to lay it out. He was very thorough about this Bruiser Brody thing. And like I said, he's already kind of like given us everything we need. I'm just going to go right into it. Like, I think that this may be one of our first, like, what I feel like is what has all the elements of a legit conspiracy theory. Lots of cover-ups, people that had a reason to cover it up, be it for the promotion, for the money, for the country, like for their local people, all that stuff, from the doctors to the everybody, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like this is one where I feel like this was 100% like that. Yeah, these two guys got into an altercation. One guy stabbed the other guy, and he was in a fucking foreign land. It's America. He was in America. He was on an island in America, but it ain't the same. He don't speak the language. It wasn't his people's. Everybody at the promotion there loved everybody who was a local because they were all locals. Those were the local guys. These were the outsiders that came in. He got shanked. Busy event. Can't get to the hospital. When he gets to the hospital, same thing, through ineptitude or whatever, or language barrier or all that stuff, did not get the stuff the medical attention he needed. He died, and they covered that shit up. And at the trial, this guy was acquitted, all the stuff, because nobody showed up to the trial. So I think this one is, frankly, like I said, we're talking conspiracy series. We actually found one. And in wrestling, of all things, that this is a full-on, I feel, is a full-on conspiracy to cover this up, because especially at the time, with all those things and the promotions and a lot of money going around, nobody wants to stop the flow of money for all these events. So it's just, one of those things. Mikey, what are your thoughts on this? The murdering and cover up of Bruiser Brody.
Number one, a sad story, right? Looking at this thing, I think it's, first and foremost, you're looking at something, and I think Brian's right. Like, there's so much corruption in this story, from where the actual stabbing took place, because there's different, whether it was in the shower area where there was no cameras or anything like that, to the reason behind it, to who did it exactly.
Yeah.
And then the length and time that it took to get to the ambulance through the crowd. And, there's just so much to it that just, all the reasons between why he didn't get the medical treatment that he needed, to who did it. It was just pure corruption. But I'm going to disagree with one thing about that Brian said. This is our 24th episode. There's no way that this is the first conspiracy we talked about on this conspiracy podcast. We've had tons of conspiracies, but
no, the first one that
means legit,
like 100%, like not like from some Brazilian website,
like not just a theory, but more or less proven.
No, I get that.
Like, it's not a single source. Multiple people were there. There's different counts from each side,
and it's a situation where you have eyewitnesses that have conflicting stories. So it's like, who do you believe? What do you believe? Is it made up? And did they turn it into an entertainment expository piece, pretty much, on the death of somebody? It's very, other than sad, it's alarming, But I think that in a world of wrestling, you got to realize it's an entertainment venue first, right? And it's show business, and I think we can all agree show business is a deadly thing,
Yeah.
And so I personally believe that the murder was real. I do think that it was, some people say it was because the guy just didn't like him and he vowed that he was going to kill him one day. But I also think that there's greed behind it too, right? He was coming there to change the business and legitimately remove this person from the business. So he had plenty of reasons to do it as well. So it's just sad, but I think it's true.
Sad but true.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah. Up top. That brings us to El Pollo Loco over here, Dave. What is your thoughts on the Brody?
How do you get to the crazy chicken?
Bruiser Brody.
Yeah, I feel like this is, like you said, I feel like this is real. We always talk about conspiracy theories, by definition, meaning that there's multiple people involved with, conspiring, working together to cover something up. And I feel like this doesn't get covered up the way that it did without multiple people being involved, right? Whether that's a combination of wrestling promoters in the US and Puerto Rico, or whether that's the people involved in the night of, or who I can't imagine this extends to, like, people paying off doctors and things like that. I feel like that part of the story is, like One Lung said, is probably just more an unfortunate set of circumstances, and maybe some language barrier, maybe again that there's just different response to stabbing, but there's no doubt in my mind that I mean, obviously he died, so he was murdered. There's no disputing that he was killed by somebody, whether it's who we all think it is or it was some random person. That's the conspiracy part of it, right? That's
he didn't stab himself.
Definitely didn't stab himself. It was not suicide. So yeah, 100% gotta be real.
Yeah. And you got it here first, folks. This is the first one we actually found a real conspiracy out in the world where it wasn't Bigfoot sex having with lizard alien people. And, I think that this it's a classic. Classic. Jesus Christ, I can't.
I'm trying to read some of these comments. No one else is checking them out. So I'm trying to look at. We want to see some of our good comments here. I guess I'm a cousin of El Generico, according to a Tight Spot Championship Wrestling. Ganja John is letting us know that he ate out of that skull that's on your shelf there.
He did, and so did you.
And so did I. Yes, I did.
As well.
Thank you, all of you, for checking us out live that are watching this right now. We appreciate it.
Jesus Christ.
Is that worth it? Is that worth it?
Is that going to be one of our terrible clippable moments? Me holding my glasses up to my mask.
Punch. Oh,
I am blind as a bat without my glasses.
Oh.
Me too, but Red, you have never looked older than you just did when you just.
You said a 90-year-old man in a wrestling mask. Look at our comments.
It could be. It could be.
Oh, well, but it's this is, like I said, I feel in all of the stuff we've talked about, this is like the feel where we are all on the same page. This is unequivocally was a true conspiracy theory where between the promoters, the other wrestlers that frankly just didn't want to be involved, which is always a classic, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, get the fuck out of town when there's bodies around. It's all those things like add up to that. Yeah, this really happened. I feel like the ambulance thing wasn't part of the conspiracy. It's just, if you've ever tried to get in and out of an event, But then there was the lack of treatment and just even how his wife was uninformed and all of those other things. And even after that, they basically kind of scooted his body, and their kid out of the damn country pretty damn quick. And that was kind of the end of it for them. And the guy that quote unquote stabbed him was acquitted because nobody showed up to testify, which is always, you're telling me all those people that were friends of his in the locker room. It's like, but yeah, Bruiser Brody, he was a bruiser. He beat up people.
They could have been paid off. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if those people were paid to not show.
He did not endear himself to the locker room. And when, somebody kind of dies that you didn't like, you're not going to go to bat for that guy. You know what I'm saying? Wife and kid or whatever. But still, it's just, no, this isn't true. I think this is our first unequivocally true conspiracy theory. Just give me a yes from everybody if you agree here. Andy, what do you think? Yes?
I mean, yeah, no, the guy, the Luis Gonzalez guy killed him. There's no doubt in my mind that he was killed, got covered up. And that guy's, I don't know if he's still alive, but I believe at the time of the Dark Side of the Ring episode, he was still alive and kicking and refused to comment. But yeah, he killed the guy and walked free on some bullshit. But yeah, I completely agree. This is this got that smelly smell that smells smelly, folks.
And we've seen that before in the last 30 years, right? We've seen famous people get away with murder and get acquitted. Just playing devil's advocate, lawyers, It's like you said, people just didn't show up to testify.
Playing OJ's advocate? So, is that what you're playing right
now?
No,
I'm just.
If the glove does not fit, then we must acquit.
Huh? Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have to get that far. That's what I'm saying. There was nobody there to fight against the story. The only person that was in the room was dead.
Do you think OJ got a new Bronco because they came back out with it?
Wow. But it wasn't his Bronco. It was Al Cowling's Bronco. See, OJ's not about that Bronco life other than laying down in the back of one.
But I think he probably has some connection to them now.
Yeah.
You think that they were like, you know what? We got to get on this OJ buzz with our new Bronco model.
Or get the juice in the new ad.
Gotta get the juice involved, huh? It's got been long enough time, right? Has it been long enough time, you guys?
Yes.
Take it camping. It's easy to lay down in the back.
Oh God, dude. I saw the juice last week. He lives like right up the street from me. Like the juice is loose.
Well, I'm actually more curious to hear what you guys think about the other side.
Well, let me finish.
That's some real scumbaggery.
Let's finish this horn here. One your thoughts on this Bruiser Brody real conspiracy.
I can't stop thinking about how we're gonna have to talk about if Macho Man Randy Savage committed statutory rape while Red's wearing that stupid fucking mask.
It's gonna make it so much better.
Oh my gosh.
Not that I think that rape is funny, but like, come the fuck on.
If I take it off, will it help?
No.
Red's like he didn't do it.
Continuity. Mikey, conspiracy.
Yeah, I think it happened.
Thanks.
A man of few words. Honestly, that's all we needed at that point.
Sorry, I can't breathe.
All right.
That makes me so happy, though.
All right, El Toro Blanco, your final thoughts on the Bruiser Brody being a real conspiracy?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, you're the white bull.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a different name every time, so I'm just making sure. Yes. 100% conspiracy. 100%.
100%.
So much so, I think we need to make a shirt that says Luis did it.
100%. I think we might get sued over that, but still, nevertheless, 100% conspiracy theory reference. Edge of the truth. We finally took you further than the edge on this conspiracy theory.
I think we know that he did it because he
climaxed on this conspiracy. We have conspiracy climaxed here.
We just finished you off.
How do you guys feel, huh? Do you feel strong about it? That we took.
I think we know that he did it because he got acquitted for self-defense. So I mean,
So he basically
That is
said
correct. He definitely did kill the guy. He just didn't get charged with
was
murder.
a
for killing
murder
the
though.
guy.
That's the question.
Yes.
And that's the
So I don't know that we get
conspiracy
sued for the shirt because he
of
did
the
do
week.
it.
Yeah.
Conspiracy of the week.
He did it.
All right.
All right. Move us
on
along here,
to,
Brian.
Wrestling. All right. So let's move another decade ahead, fellas. Another decade ahead. We're in the
94,
heydays.
95.
We're in the heydays of the WWE's first run. Hogan versus Savage. The Ultimate Warrior is still wrestling. All of these men are very racist, apparently, but I did not know at the time as a fan. But, apparently all these very racist men had some stuff going on. But the conspiracy is because, many people know, if you've watched wrestling for a long time, and there's like a lot of shows and stuff about it, is, there's ebbs and flows where stars go away, they go to other companies, and eventually money talks and everybody comes back. All the times that Vince McMahon said he'd never work with Hulk Hogan again or all this stuff. And then sure enough, came back for money. And that's because so many people had beef with McMahon. Pretty much every superstar at one time or another has had beef with McMahon, and yet they always come back for the money, except for one person that would have, I think, more than loved to have come back for the money and was never able to, and that was Macho Man Randy Savage. And this conspiracy theory goes that Macho Man Randy Savage apparently had relations with Vince McMahon's then underage daughter, and I think she was 14 or 15 or something like that. And that, whatever the underage is, because I've heard all the way down.
It's all underage, correct?
The point is, it's underage, and that apparently Vince got a hold of that information, and he was immediately gone and blackballed from the industry. And many people have talked about this conspiracy over the years. His brother, who I did not know was a wrestler. I did not know that his brother was a wrestler. He was God, no, I already forgot. Who was? Anybody know who his brother was?
Lonnie or Lanny?
What was his name? He wore the freaking cap and gown.
I don't know what his name was. I just know it was like Lanny Poffo or something like that.
Yeah, he was. God, he was. Fuck.
Y'all know I can't see. Otherwise, I would type it in.
I'm looking. Lanny Poffo, known as Leaping Lanny Poffo.
Leaping Lanny, no, it was something else.
And the Genius.
The Genius.
Yes, that's the cap and gown. Okay.
Yes, he was. I did not know that was his brother. But apparently in one interview, he said once that, that the only two people that knew what happened were Stephanie and his brother, and one is dead and the other one ain't going to talk. So it's that's the whole thing. Because if Vince McMahon knows, well, I guess it's three, because if Vince McMahon knows, he ain't talking,
Yeah, but who told Vince McMahon then?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Somebody else has to know.
That means there's four people.
Yeah, or
more, right?
This before. It's not like he found a text. This was before that time. Like maybe he found a letter. I don't know. Macho Man's not a big letter writer, but nevertheless, the point is that he went to WCW and had this run there, and then WWE bought WCW and did not bring him back very notably, and he kind of went off and faded into kind of a steroid raged obscurity. Where he was, doing anything he could possibly do, culminating in the Spider-Man movie. I think that was the last thing he did that I can remember that was notable. I'm sure he probably did some other small stuff here and there. And then, died from, what did he die from? It was tragic.
Yeah, he was driving and he had a heart attack.
Yeah, that's
actually driving a Jeep Wrangler, small world, had a heart attack and crashed into a tree.
It had a good trunk space.
Come on, drop the dealership, dude.
No, I am not that low, but
not wait till he needs to get this quota, then he'll be that low. But come on down to Fudge's Jeep and Ford.
But how does this get information then? How does this then get leaked? I mean, I watched some of the stuff that you guys did, which is why I'm like, okay, well, did she tell her father? Did Randy tell him to blow it in his face? Did somebody witness it? Are there other siblings? Are there other McMahon siblings?
Well, there's Shane McMahon.
There's two others at least, right?
So one of them could have known about it. I mean, I feel like if the girl was 14, 15, 16,
if Macho Man's banging your little sister,
brother would kind of know what was going on,
possibly.
or at least, yeah.
The point is, I think other people do know. Other people had to have known, because then how would Vince have known to have blackballed him in the first place? And in the end, other people also would have to know that he was blackballed, and or why, or at least to know that, oh yeah, he blackballed. I mean, it's even that is that he ain't coming back. But yeah, I mean, it is one of those things that it kind of has gained more traction over the years, especially as more other things came out that happened in wrestling during those times, especially as people are digging into it more with this whole dark side of the ring and stuff like that. And on the flip side of the people say it's just, a good conspiracy theory or a salacious thing or any of these things. It's just, it's also a little bit of like a low-hanging fruit to go after Vince McMahon's daughter, and just, especially when you can do it with a guy that is dead. So it's that whole thing too.
Can't defend himself.
But yeah, I mean, your thoughts, guys. I mean, do you think that this is a possible, plausible conspiracy theory that happened? Do you think it's possible that this, that this happened and all of it, and that's why he was out of wrestling, or if it was, something else or what? So, Mikey One Lungs, what's your thoughts on this this conspiracy of the Randy Macho Mans?
Is it possible? Yes, I think it's definitely possible. And I'd actually venture to say it's probably closer to 50% correct, I would think. Because the timelines that they mention, 94, 95, put Stephanie McMahon actually at 18 years old at 94. And so I think that it is possible that he did sleep with her. And I think it's definitely possible that Vince McMahon blackballed him because of it. I don't know that he did it when she was underage, though. And that's the piece that I have a hard time with, because I think that in order to say that he did that, then you're really dragging somebody through the mud at that point. You're saying that they did something really bad. And I think that if somebody did that, and especially if I was a father and I knew that, dude, that guy would be in jail. I mean, I wouldn't be stopping at blackballing him and getting him out of my company. He would be gone. Like, you'd be in jail. He'd be.
Well, even then, especially in those the early 90s, like I said, there was also a lot of age of consent is 16 and 17 in a lot of states. So, it could have still been, that she was underage by today's standards, but at that time, she was a woman as recognized by certain state laws. So
sure. So maybe I'll say that I don't know that he broke a law, but even at 16, 17, that's gross. But, I'm just saying, like, I don't know that he did that, but I think that it's very plausible that
plausible. I think is a good answer. Andy, what do you think here on this one? You think the plausibilities are correct, or what are you thinking?
I think it's definitely possible. One of the articles that I had read about this when I was doing some research, there was a quote from his girlfriend, supposedly at the time, that said that she had apparently had said that he confessed it to her. They were on the beach. They were on
ecstasy.
They had taken some ecstasy.
We all know that drugs bring out the truth sometimes.
Yes.
And he apparently just started talking and kind of spilled it out. Woke up the next morning and said, "Hey, did I tell you something last night?" And she said, "Yes." So there's a little bit of confirmation there. I think also another side to this that I kind of read about was, kind of at the time, before he left for WCW, he was only being used as like a commentator, because Vince had kind of thought like he was out of his prime and he really wasn't, fit for the ring anymore. And he didn't think that. He was like, I think I can still, put over guys like Shawn Michaels and stuff like that. So he goes over to WCW. And then, like Brian, you said earlier, is one of the only ones that, really just never came back. He gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, in 2015 after he had already passed away. So it just feels like there was never really any closure there. So I absolutely could see how there was still some bad blood, or how Vince, would kind of hold a grudge on this. I know Triple H, and him had beef at one point. After Triple H was quoted in the interviews calling him a dinosaur, and he did not take too kindly to that. I think he posted a video on YouTube or something as a response. I don't know. I mean, at the time, Macho Man was one of the biggest, stars in wrestling. I know, like earlier I was talking about, his girlfriend said he had confessed to liking younger girls. I don't know if she's, just trying to get some dirt on him or whatever. It's all hearsay at this point, but it is pretty interesting. One of them is dead, and then she won't comment on it at all. So I think there's a little bit of smoke here. I could be convinced that this is true.
Well, and also if, she also has a thing for wrestlers, as illustrated by the fact that she married one. Mm-hmm. So it's like that also breeds a mix of like, yeah, I mean, she's around all these meaty men's all the time, all the time, because she's on the road, she's doing all this stuff with her dad.
Grew up in it.
She grew up in it. And just, if it's things and young people, stupid stuff, doing stuff to get back to their dad, doing stuff for the thrill, the vibe stuff happens. So, I mean, let's throw it back to the great masked wonder here. Red Rasmus, your thoughts on the plausible?
Yes, for sure plausible. I mean, let's assume even that they didn't get together until after she was 18. At the very least, I feel like there's some grooming going on here, right? Mm-hmm. Flirting with an underage girl over time to build up to that moment. I mean, I don't think that's something that just happens all of a sudden, right? Especially with an age difference like that. I don't know. But I also feel like Vince McMahon, I'm kind of with one lung. Why would you, if it was underage, why would you stop at just blackballing the guy and letting him exist and go get another job with another company and still thrive? Not necessarily as much as he was before. But then again, the guy did do a hell of a lot of Slim Jim ads. So, it's not to say that I don't know what his financial status was when he died, and I know he wasn't an old man. I mean, there are definitely older wrestlers out there still wrestling, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was big.
Look at Ric Flair. Right.
58.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, I mean, it's 10 years away from my age right now. I can't imagine that anything that would have happened illegally wouldn't have been reported, and they would have just ended that guy's career. Period. If the story is then that's not what happened, well, then people probably observed the two of them together while they were underage, or they're even just hanging out backstage and talking and looking, maybe an innocent conversation to some people's eyes, but to other people's eyes, it was exactly what it was, which was maybe something more along the lines of grooming. And if that's the case, and it's definitely in a blurry area of when behavior started and what actually happened and all that sort of thing, then I feel like Vince did everything that he felt like he could to make that guy's life miserable. And we definitely don't think that Vince McMahon is a nice guy, right?
Yeah. No, he's a piece of fucking shit. Oh, didn't he just got kicked out because he's a piece of garbage and had relations with how many different women? Also, Red,
cover it up.
Red, I just want to say you look great for 68. You look.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
He is 68 years old. You heard it here first.
I know. 69 in 3 months, man. I'm doing good.
58. So he is 68 years old. Wow. Thanks for coming out for that. But yes, I think Red says it's probable as well. I mean, I think that a few things, like I said, I think that here's why I think it could be a million other things. Stuff always happens in locker rooms with people, taking their junk out. You know what I'm saying? It happens in sports teams. So it's the same with locker room stuff over here. Number one. Number two, I feel like that this is he could have just Louis C.K'd her. You know what I'm saying? Or he could have just maybe she gave him a hand roll. It could have been any of like a million other things. They was like, oh, he didn't sleep with my daughter, but she still, put his dick in her face or whatever. Yeah. That would blackball you for life, So
I'm gonna go on a limb here. What do you mean by he could have Louis Cater? What does that mean?
Oh, he masturbated in front of her. He just whipped out his dick.
Yeah.
Oh,
you don't know that. You don't know
Yeah,
that.
that was Louis C.K.'s thing.
That was Louis' move.
Verb. It's a verb.
I vaguely remember that now. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, vaguely. Wow. This guy's doesn't have his finger on the pulse.
It's now
You're
a
not an
thing.
ally. You're not an ally. You don't know about these kind of things. You got to be an ally to women in the comedy community.
Okay.
But nevertheless,
coming from Brian.
there's I'm an ally.
Yes.
I'm an ally.
He's an ally that tells us about all of his sexual conquests.
Every one of them.
Yeah, all the deviants.
Yes,
all the
because I'm
deviants
trying
possible.
to let you know all the fun things that are out there in life. I'm an ally to those women. I may be an ex to those women, but I was an ally then, and I'm an ally now.
Uh-huh.
I was born a
And
sheep
that
handler,
is
and I'll
the
die
end
a
of the
sheep
show.
But the point is, I think there was, or I think the third thing it could be was that something happened either in the locker room, and maybe not with Stephanie McMahon, but with someone else that was kind of bad enough that they were like, you know what I'm saying? Hey, maybe he went a little on the Linda McMahon, you know what I'm saying? Maybe a little side hustle. She went a little young, you know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
You never know what has happened. Never could have happened. How stuff
Or
went.
what about his own wife? I mean, what if it was just like a marital infidelity or something like that?
The only thing that I'm going to say, though, is that he made a comment to Triple H later about how he could just take Stephanie around the block. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if he did something so terrible that where he slept with her while she was underage, he would not be throwing that back up into the media.
Yeah, you wouldn't want that to get out.
That just seems like that's a bad plan.
Yeah, but you know, it's not like he was, as his brother was, the genius. I mean, I think it was
he was the Macho Man.
He was the Macho Man. You know what I'm saying? And like sometimes that character becomes a little too much that character. You know, it's just you live it for so many years, and all the women love you and everything like that. And hey, you know, it's just one of those things. It's all men in power, you know, abuse it sometimes. And like I said, maybe you just flopped it out and see what happens, you know? So
I'll still say I think it's possible. I just don't know that it happened as the way that it said, you know? That's for
Well, the ultimate point is we don't know. But so for this conspiracy theory, I think that we're all going to kind of go full circle and say, like, I don't think any of us in here is going to say that unequivocally, no, it didn't happen. I think that there's enough elements and pieces of the story and holes and everything, and frankly, a lot of other things that it could have possibly been. There's just angles that we're not even thinking of that it could be even simpler than that. And so I think I'm going to throw it right back around. This time we'll start with the Mask of Justice over here, Dave. Your thoughts on this, final thought on this. Plausible?
Yeah, plausible. For sure, plausible. There's nothing more that I think that I don't think you can go any further with this than say it's plausible, but we're never going to know the details. And whatever the details were, we know that Randy Savage definitely got blackballed. I mean, I feel like there's enough evidence to say that happened. For the reason, for what reason, we'll never probably know.
But the fact is, he didn't work no more, at least for that. So he did everything else. But Mikey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of angles and a lot of holes, so it's possible.
This guy likes angles and holes up top.
You knew what you were doing when you said holes. You knew what you were doing.
He had to have known.
Fudge, who knows what he is doing, who's hitting parlays left and right, living the sports dream, our resident sports expert. Plausible?
I think it's definitely plausible. I think there's a few different factors here. I think, Brian, maybe it was somebody else in the locker room who might have been, a little shady. But there's definitely something there. If like just the amount of guys that, he brought back from WCW, and just especially for the amount of success that Macho Man had, was one of the greatest champions of all time. He's a Hall of Famer in wrestling. Had
even get an invite back to do a commentary or nothing.
So I think there's something there, whether it was if he slept with his daughter or pissed them off in some other way. I think something behind the scenes happened for sure, for there to be some bad blood there. Because I think you even talked about it earlier, Brian, where at the end of the day, McMahon's a businessman. He's about making money. He had reconciled multiple grievances with people because he was like, oh, we're going to make how much money? Yeah. All right. Whatever. Yeah, you're back. I'm in. So for him to, I don't know if it's ignore, blackball, whatever, Randy Savage, it feels the waters are a little murky, fellas. There's something there.
Yeah.
So I think this has been a good episode where two conspiracy theories in one, where we're both where both of them we are all in. We're both kind of like, all right, yeah, there's more to this. I think we're in.
And even
it's always sports too. FIFA was like this too.
Yeah,
remember?
But what Fudge brought up too is somebody even think about it. Could have just been some other guy that just said, "Do you know what this guy did? True or not true?" Yeah. Literally, it could have just been that simple too. But
there was another article I read where it was like where they had interviewed a wrestler where he was like, yeah, it was kind of just like accepted, like in the wrestling community that like kind of something had went on, like it between the two of them, where it was like everybody just kind of knew, but nobody really said anything. Nobody said anything, but somebody obviously.
I'm just gonna go to work. Not my business. Yeah,
exactly.
You know, when you blackballed too.
Yeah, blackballed. So that brings us to the end with our black balls in this episode. That's your wrestling name now, Black Balls. It works with the mask. Okay. So he's Black Balls. But fellas, we a great episode here. But... That's why this is part one of a 3-part series, because I feel like some of these other wrestling conspiracies, once I dug in, I think there's something in there and a couple of these other ones. So we'll come back to this another day. But for today, our first truly confirmed actual conspiracy that we've covered, and a very plausible second one. So it's been and we're all united too. Like, this is very wrestling. Who knew this was the one that would bring the edging community together to a climax? It's been good times, fellas. So the Black Mask here. Why don't you tell the peeps a little more voicemail line where they can find us? Do your thing.
Absolutely, you can. Yes. Well, I mentioned earlier. I think we do need to have an Edging the Truth shirt that's wrestling themed. We have lots of great stuff in our shop, including some great logo items. But my favorite is the design that has Bigfoot as an alien based on one of Brian's fabulous theories. If you like what you're hearing on our podcast today, when you're listening to this either live or after the fact, and you want to tell us about it, the best way you can do that is to call our voicemail line. It's 917-979-6071. We try to post a week in advance our topics for the following episode so that you can maybe call in before we do the episode and we could play some of your voicemails on the show. But we'd also love to hear from you after the show has been on the air. We'd love to be able to play your comments for our fellow listeners and the rest, each other. How, what you thought about this episode. So if you're a fan of wrestling and you liked what we had to say, call us. If you're a fan of wrestling and you didn't like what we had to say, please call and correct us. If you're not a fan of wrestling and you thought this was a dumb conversation and to come up with something better like UFOs and Bigfoot, call and tell us. We want to hear your voice. Again, that's 917-979-6071. And of course, we're at edgingthetruth.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're Edging the Truth everywhere.
Now do it again in a wrestling promo voice. Give us the phone number and a good wrestling. Come on, you got to cut a promo for us here with the mask on.
Listen here, brother.
Sunday. Call the Edging the Truth voicemail line at 917-979-6071.
That's what I'm fucking talking about, fellas.
Hey, Brian.
And if you have that same mask as Red, take a picture of yourself in that mask and send it to us, please.
Yes, this is a costume supply Halloween shop mask. So if you're a fan, just take a picture. We'd love to see it. Send us anything. We can receive stuff on Instagram and most of our other social media.
Oh, we can receive.
Andy? My favorite wrestling memory is getting breakfast with Ron and Danhausen.
Do you guys feel that? Is there he's flexing in here?
That was an end of episode flex.
And then seeing CM Punk's return back to wrestling with AEW with Funchess, and then obviously seeing him in the ring when he originally called out Tony Deppen before he actually wrestled, but that was really cool. And then seeing my first death match at GCW was also pretty awesome. I
Those
don't
guys go hard.
It was pretty nuts. The shit they break over each other is just fucking. It just makes you go.
It's
ugh.
silly. I have a whole other appreciation seeing the door busting and barbed wire stuff live,
and the fucking tube lights and shit like that. Just fucking. Oh my god. But anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. Great episode.
Yep, episode 24, Wrestling Conspiracies. They're true. The truth is out
Angles
there.
and holes.
Visit edgingthetruth.com for more information and links to all our social media and podcast directories.